215 little kids whose parents never knew what happened to them. These are unmarked, unregistered kids found in a mass grave. This is the reality of residential schools. And something really interesting happened over the weekend. People were talking about residential schools as a part of a horrible part of the history of Canada. And while it's historic, it's not that long ago.
For more on this, I'm joined by Robert Fife. He's the Ottawa bureau chief for the Globe and Mail newspaper, and he joins me live from Canada's capital. Robert, this has been a stunning thing for the world to watch, a mass grave, hundreds of children in Canada. And I know that there could be multiple reasons of this. We mentioned illness could be one cause. Is there any evidence of what could have happened here? And is there a thought that this could go deeper, that these deaths could have also possibly been deliberate or the result of abuse?
Well, there was certainly abuse at the residential schools, violent and sexual abuse that's been documented by survivors. But this discovery of 215 young children at this one reserve is simply the tip of the iceberg. It's a very shameful episode in Canada's history. There are, we know from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was set up, which reported in 2016, that there are at least 117,000 children in unmarked graves or buried at residential schools. One Native leader, highly respected, believes that number could be as high as 15,000. After this report came out, the Prime Minister said, oh, you know, how terrible, and the country is genuinely shocked by it, and he put the flags at half-mast. But what needs to be done, and it was a report in that Truth and Reconciliation report, is to go and find those bodies. Use the kind of technology we can to find those bodies, identify their names, and give their families some peace with the realization that these kids who were taken from their homes and died usually from tuberculosis or from fires or from suicide or from trying to run away, a place where they can be returned to their reservations or their homes so that they can be buried properly. That's what needs to be done. I think there is now going to be public pressure on this government to do the right thing. But, you know, Canadians are in shock about this, but we shouldn't be in shock about. We knew that this was going on. We had a report 6 years ago that told us, 299 pages, that there were all these graves that are unmarked, and we still did not do anything about it as a country.
And you mentioned the Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau has been vocal about this. He has acknowledged loudly that this is not an isolated incident. He said that there's going to be concrete action. What do you expect the next step by the government to be realistically, and what has the response from the Indigenous community been?
Well, first of all, the Prime Minister should have did what the report had recommended 6 years ago, which was to go out and dig up those bodies in these residential, the residential schools are gone, but dig up the bodies, return them to where they came from, and also to fulfill all the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which he had promised to do and has failed to do so. Now, clearly, the Native leaders, Indigenous leaders in this country are outraged. They're in great sorrow. You have to understand what happened to these children. When they would be in remote communities, and the RCMP and an Indian Affairs officer would fly in and literally take the kids off the streets, so they even get to see their parents, put on planes and taken away. And many, as we now know, never ever got back to see their families. They faced sexual abuse, violence, just horrendous things that happened to these children. So we need to do more. And frankly, you know, Mr. Trudeau likes to have a great image across the world, but, you know, he is right now in court fighting a Canadian Human Rights Commission report that is asking the government to treat Indigenous children on reserves the same way any other child is treated in this country. And he is fighting that in court.
Is this unfortunately one of those cases where it takes something so extreme like this, getting the attention of the entire world, their shock, for real change to happen?
You're absolutely right. You know, when the story was first broke a couple of days ago, it hadn't even made the front pages. Now it is on the front pages. It is something that I think has genuinely shocked Canadians, certainly of younger generation. And I think the country has to come to a reckoning with this. And I think we are going to come to a reckoning of this. But there is a lot to be done. You have no idea the conditions on First Nations people live in this country. There are still boiled water advisories. They live on reservations with tar paper shacks. Canada, the situation of Canada's First Nations people many of them live in third world conditions, and it is the worst social problem facing this country, and we still have not come to grips with it.
Robert, thanks for that explanation.